And we are live. Hello, and thanks for tuning in. This is the SuperBoss Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ian, and I'm joined by Harrison and Luke.
So, hello.
If you're a new listener, what we do here is we talk about whatever we want, usually things that are about comic heroes and video games. And that's what we do. Yeah. So sit
Yeah.
back, relax,
Yeah.
grab a snack. I feel like the
Snacky
intro that I'm reading is the outdated version, and I picked the wrong one, but that's okay.
I was sitting here, I was like, well, what? I think we need to clean up that folder.
Like, I need to paraphrase, quick.
Oops.
Ad lib, or whatever it's called.
All we do. Yeah, ad lib.
But yeah, so without further ado, Harrison, how are you doing? What have you been up to?
I'm going to butt in because I have a great story that concerns both of you, actually.
Let's go. Let's do it.
So, maybe like 2 weeks ago. So a little bit of background. I play in a tabletop that uses the masks system, which is basically it's a superhero themed tabletop. Specifically where it's almost like Teen Titans or Young Justice, where you're meant to be playing younger characters because their mechanics dealing with kind of like your superhero identity and your civilian identity / like you just being, a teenager and growing up with that instead of being like, oh, I'm Iron Man and I'm 36 years old and blah, 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 blah. But I have a group of friends who play in that. And we kind of mishmashed it with there is a web novel called Worm, written by J.C. Wildbow, or John C. McCrae. He goes by Wildbow. Probably one of the greatest pieces of fiction I've ever read. I have reread the entire series over the past 2 weeks. And we keep talking, specifically to Harrison. He's like, this year, you know what? I'm going to read Worm. So me laying it out, I've reread it. The whole thing. Harrison, how far are you in Worm? The year is over, halfway over. It is August now.
It is August. that is that is facts. That's where am I?
Ian, where are you?
Man, listen, I didn't make that promise.
Look, I want you to screen cap my face, and I want you to make notes of how superior my face is. I'm looking down upon you with a smug aura of superiority.
You know what's the best part?
I reread my favorite series. You guys didn't. Get wrecked.
You know what's funny? It's like I'm looking down, and on my setup, you're like the bottom one, and I'm like wait,
looking into nothing.
That's a good question.
I just had to get that out of the way before.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I can say why I haven't been reading I haven't been reading Worm is because there's another thing that our group has pushed me into playing more, and I've started playing a lot more Final Fantasy 14,
which is a good choice, a good decision.
It's I now get like. Because back then, like when I was on the free trial, I finished A Realm Reborn, and I think I got halfway through post ARR. Pretty bland.
It was a weird point because like also around that time we had a lot of people just stop playing for some reason.
Yeah. Something came up. It's always something came up. I have no idea. Let's be real. But
something.
I've just been playing. But after sorting out my account stuff, essentially I just played up to a certain, like, essentially because I had to start it over completely. It was dumb.
Yeah,
super dumb.
That was unlucky.
But I finally got to 50, and then at the time there was a sale for ARR skip, so I'm like, all right, $7, why not? Because I don't want to go through this again.
Yeah.
So then just did that, but then I've been playing a lot of Heaven's Weed. So I finished.
Heaven's Weed.
Heaven's Weed.
Heaven's Weed.
Dragoon, no thanks. I'm a dank goon.
Nah, thank goon. Nah, I finished Heaven's Word yesterday. Ian helped me out. Like Ian came in and he was like, oh, just help me out with the last part. But then of course there's post Heaven's Word stuff. And I've just
Post
been
Heaven's Word is also like really fun.
It's actually really good.
Yeah.
Like it's like the story. It's like they figured out the story. At least at this point, probably when it came out, it's like they figured out their pacing. And
Yeah,
like,
I think they actually end up hitting. They start hitting their stride.
Yeah,
probably like around mid post Heaven's Word, and then like I like Stormblood. A lot of people didn't, but Stormblood I think is also just a very strong. Like, oh yeah, this is Final Fantasy 14.
mm-hmm.
And then you hit Shadowbringers, which is a whole different thing. Thing. But yeah, Post is
it's really good. Like
it has some really fun dungeons and trials.
Yeah. And like doing a few of the dungeons already, I'm like, wait, this is actually pretty cool. Like the way the mechanics, like I think Luke says it best. It's not just a avoid this orange spot.
Yeah, don't stand here.
Like you kind of actually understand. Like it's not hard, but it's just like a nice change. Like the I forgot the one. It was like I think it was the library with the book. Like for instance, like like you have to like it took me a bit, but it wasn't hard. But it's just figuring out like when it turns, you have to pay attention to the shadow. Try not to fall off. I was like, oh, this is actually cool. Like it's kind of the same idea, but it's not blatant. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, oh, you do pay attention, but not just like, oh, I see good color or I see bad color. Move.
Stay away from bad color.
But I will still say I think it's really nice that like Final Fantasy still does a very good job in like essentially announcing what's about to happen. And I think that's still a good thing coming from other MMOs. And I think for and this is also like I haven't played a tap target in a long time, so this is also just kind of refreshing because our editors played WoW way more because I only played vanilla WoW and that's it. Like I didn't go beyond that. Like I had Burning Crusade, but I didn't like legitimately play for a good bit just because back then I was a middle school kid, so obviously money. I would only play like in the summer. But I think Luke would know for sure because it'd be like, it's like we're about to hang out. I was like, all right, I'm out later, boys.
Yep.
Or at the time, it was like, oh, you were playing Maple Story, I think, and I was like, oh, and I
was playing something else.
You're playing something else,
something
and
free.
I was just like, yeah, something, yeah. Meanwhile, man, but
that's a good point.
And then I mean, our group's been playing a lot too, and I've just been trying to catch up to you guys honestly because I want to actually do content together.
Well, I ended up. I'm a little behind now because Ian just hit Stormblood. I'm like, I think I'm a dungeon away from Stormblood.
Oh, that's right. I can't think
we
you
also
were on
no, not yet. I'm basically at Stormblood, but I took a huge break because I'm waiting because I really want to do the Alexander raid, which is it's basically Heaven's Word's comparison to Coil, except it's actually fun.
Yeah.
And also people queue up for Alexander, so it's not something just we get a tiny group of people to go into, stomp everything without like we just ignore the mechanics. It's we'll queue in, we'll be at level, and we actually have to do the mechanics, but they're really fun. So because I've technically been at the same spot now for like a month or two, and I just like, oh, I'm gonna go to the Golden Saucer or something like that.
Or work on your freakish long.
Or I'm doing a relic weapon step.
Relic quest, yeah.
I just got the anima one. I just got it randomly. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I guess that's the Heaven's Word one, from what I'm understanding.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I think relics specifically for ARR kind of.
There's like people basically call it. There's the ARR relic. There's the anima relic, which is all of Heaven's Word.
Yeah.
You have the Eureka. Eureka, there is both a relic armor and a relic weapon. And then I don't remember what they call it for Shadowbringers, but they call it something else.
Forgot to. Yeah, it's just another relic thing. But I was like, oh, that's cool. So
relic, it's something to do. I do enjoy that. Like it's not mind numbing enough where I don't want to do it. It's just it's just a long quest, basically.
Yeah.
But mainly just been playing that. But the other thing that I'm like, it's really like I was only two. I've been doing two things this past like couple weeks: is play that and watch everything Halo. Because I have, because like the technical preview, I guess that's what they call. I don't freaking know. That dropped like I think last weekend or something like that, and I didn't get in, so I just watched everyone else play, and I'm like, dang it, I really want Halo to come out at this point. Well, specifically PvP, because that's
probably the only thing people really care about is the PvP part.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's some people. I mean, I'll probably play the campaign just out of like I've played everything at this point. It's just like not. But
are
just
you going to
watching
do
it more,
the whole thing where you play it on Legendary with 4 friends again?
Probably not.
Or it's just I just play it on normal to see what the story is, and
that's probably the case. Like
go back to PvP.
Usually that's what I do, and then and then just go back. Unless like we have a group that's like, hey, let's actually try. I'm like, all right, but we'll see when that comes out because I have no idea. Because Halo 5's not doing that. I'm excited for that though, because I was like, it's funny because Apex also just dropped their new update, I think, or their new season. I have no urge to play because I'm just like, I'll just wait. I can wait. I have other stuff I can play.
Yeah.
And then I uninstalled Destiny because I'm like, there's no point in playing that.
Oh, he's done it.
I've done.
Finally.
I'm out because I'm like, there's actual like one Final Fantasy actually has content.
Yeah.
And it's actually not just me gambling to get a roll. But
yep. You've moved MMOs.
Dude. If anything, I just found it. I don't even count Destiny as an MMO in all honesty. It's a pseudo, if anything.
A pseudo-mo.
Pseudo-mo. But
yeah,
that's all I've been doing. Switching it back to Luke.
I'm going to switch it back to you because one thing I'm sure most people who end up watching Twitch are vaguely into Final Fantasy or WoW at this point kind of know that there's just a gigantic streamer called Asmongold, and he's been playing Final Fantasy 14, and it's interesting to hear from his because he originally was a WoW streamer, and he was like a really I don't know if he was the WoW streamer, but he was a big WoW streamer, and it seems like he's just kind of over World of Warcraft at this point. Like I think he said he'd still play it, but he's in that honeymoon phase with Final Fantasy right now because he just did Heavensward. He just unlocked Dark Knight, and he's like having a lot of fun. And it's cool to see him. He's like a MMO veteran. He's talking about all these comparisons, and he's had a few other people talk about like both old WoW people or just only Final Fantasy people who've tried Final Fantasy or old Final Fantasy who tried WoW. I was gonna ask because you played WoW so far back, and so you might not remember, but you kind of have the same like amount of time invested where you have vanilla WoW versus you still like you have Heavensward at this point. But can you think of any like big comparisons at this point, or like just do compares and contrasts? Because I just think it's interesting because outside of everything that's been happening at Blizzard, just in terms of just looking at the game itself, it feels like WoW is decreasing while Final Fantasy is increasing. It might be because Final Fantasy has a new expansion planned, and I don't think WoW has one planned for another few months. But like, there's the swoop, and I'm wondering. I just want to pick your brain because out of the three of us, you've had the most time playing both WoW and Final Fantasy.
Yeah, I think the easiest way to say it, and I think
otherwise
I heard him say.
Otherwise, I'd ask our editor.
I know, right? I was gonna say our editor is probably like a better point because to me, because I did play. Actually, no, I did play Burning Crusade, but just not that. I didn't play that much. Just not as much. And I bought Wrath of the Lich King, but I didn't get to play as much either. Whoops. But I think the biggest thing that I can tell, I think that the thing for me, which is the most apparent thing, is Final Fantasy just has like a solid story. While and this is okay, this is comparing like vanilla to AR to vanilla essentially. Because I think the one pull back then for WoW was like this is coming from like people like because I played Warcraft 2 and mostly 3. And I think the big pull for World of Warcraft was just like it was like a sandbox that you could play in this world, like the WoW, like the Warcraft world, essentially. And I actually don't remember there being one cohesive story. There was like a lot of like quest lines that I vaguely remember, but I don't remember there being like anything in vanilla. And at any point, our editor can like message, just DM and just correct me. But at least with Final Fantasy, it was more I can actually play through like a storyline and but also still learn the game at the same time. While like I felt my thing with WoW back then was always like, oh, you're doing all the quest stuff, you're doing everything in the area to just progress to the next one because it's like I think it was more apparent with like the like level queues on like certain areas, like your it's like 1 to 10 here, 10 to 20 here. It's just like that's the only progression I remember. But like in Final Fantasy, it's like you're still going back and forth with that. And this is me strictly talking about like just story, right? Otherwise, I think uh and I and this is and compared to when I played WoW to this, I know a lot of people now like say WoW is like has a more toxic community. Like there's no question, like hands down, and that's one of the reasons why I never wanted to go back. Well, also it's like there's a for me there's going to be a learning curve regardless to get back. But also I just didn't feel like, and therefore I just didn't feel like because I had a few other friends that still played and it just like kept me in the loop, and I just like still talk to them about it because I do still keep up once in a while. Just because I do care, I do like the lore, except now the lore is like as if they don't really know what's going on anymore.
Sylvanas does everything. That's the lore.
Oh, don't even get me started. I was like, damn. Um, where was it going with that? Man.
Final Fantasy has like more of a through line story to follow.
Yeah, I think. Oh, so WoW community is more toxic, but then back then it was more because it was the internet. It wasn't as bad. I'd say like everyone was like about the same level of like Final Fantasy now, except Final Fantasy difference is they're still helpful and like they see like a sprout and they still help out and it's like they explain what's going on. I still get that feel. I'm like, oh, that's really like I've had people come up as like, hey, I see you're doing this. You need help. You want me to ride you? Like this is random people. I'm like, this is weird. Like I remember getting this back then, but I didn't. Playing games and like being online for forever. I'm not used to that. So it was like a more friendly community. And I was like, oh, this is nice. Like, and I was just like, wow, I'm actually telling people like, no thanks, because I'm so used. So the way I play is more like I don't really go on game chat that much anyway. So it was a weird difference for me. It's just having that community because I played Guild Wars too, and they are relatively helpful as well. But Guild Wars is also more of a you honestly could just solo content no problem. While in Final Fantasy you do still have to kind of do more dungeons and stuff more. And the story to me is way better in Final Fantasy, obviously, than Guild Wars.
Yeah, a lot of like activities and stuff are more like
yeah,
group oriented. You got
it's
like
more group.
your
Like you actually
fates
queue up.
and dungeons and
Yeah.
yeah.
If anything, like the fates in Final Fantasy is just essentially just Guild Wars as a game, in my opinion. Like everything happens outside in the world, and you could go in and help, and then you just leave. But and then with WoW, that was like kind of like that back then. Which when Classic came out, everyone did mention that because there's a lot of things like there's no like LFG queues or anything like that. Right. It was always like, oh, you do it the old-fashioned way. You say in all chat, and you're like, hey, I'm trying to get into this group, and or trying to do this dungeon, and everyone's sitting outside the dungeon portal or the instance queue or instance portal and all that. So yeah, those are the two big things for me in my experience, at least. Other than that, though, I don't. It's just because I haven't played in so long, I can't like speak on the specifics, and I don't like play MMOs as much anymore. If anything, this was the first time I've legitimately got back in because like I played Guild Wars for a bit in the meantime for like a couple months, but it also just wasn't like I thought I liked it because I do like I like the aesthetics in Guild Wars I still kind of like a little bit more, at least with like like the style and like it feels more hard like hard I can't think of the word all of a sudden. It's like more it feels
Like
more
just high
fantasy than
fantasy?
more high fantasy than like because for Final Fantasy it's just to me I always just viewed as this is just Final Fantasy.
Final Fantasy,
Anything
yeah.
like
They've,
anything
like,
that they have like
curated
cat
their own
people
aesthetic.
or like yeah. It's like so for me it's just like Final Fantasy did a good job in like what WoW did with Warcraft. Final Fantasy did it honestly with 14 does a very good job of like this is Final Fantasy in MMO, like just a war like a sandbox and you could just go around and experience it. But they also leverage story. So in my opinion that's just the big thing. But I did watch like a lot of the others because I watched Asmongold Gold giving Belior. There's one other one I used to watch, but I was watching like their input just because with everything Blizzard right now, obviously everyone I think if anything, WoW's just been going down since Cataclysm because that's when I kind of fell off as well because I was like, oh, I don't really care too much, but there's always every expansion I thought about going back, but nothing pulled. And then I think maybe Final Fantasy is more like their story. More it was with you guys. If anything, that's the reason why I play more. But I think the story is definitely keeping me now because AR did not. But then playing Heaven's Word, I was like, oh okay, you're all right.
Do you think you're gonna stick with Final Fantasy after? Well, even are you gonna get Endwalker? Because I know, a few weeks ago we talked about Lost Ark, and it seemed like you were kind of down for that. Do you think you'll even get Endwalker?
So if anything,
my overall question is like, what do you think you're gonna do when you're done with the story?
I think if I feel like playing it, I'll come back because it's more like because at least like the way Yoshi P talks about it, I think his idea of how the game should be played is actually exactly how I want to play. Is like you play it for like you play your chunk, and then once you're done, and you can come back for the expansion you want.
You're not gonna like make an alt, or you're not gonna hunt for like relic weapons or rare. Like you just want to do content.
Kind of hard to say now because I think now playing it Heaven's Word more, I was like, okay, maybe I will start playing this a lot more frequently. Because I was like talking to Captain or one of our friends yesterday. I was like, oh, maybe I want to hunt for mounts and do it for like each expansion because some of them look really cool. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll start doing it. And then I actually did start picking up like the relic weapons for like my ninja or like the AR one and then the Heaven's Word one. I was like, okay, maybe I'll start doing that. But it seems like more like for those, like at least the relic stuff is more like a passive thing. I'm not like hunting for it right now because I am right now. All I'm focused on is like trying to get through the content. I want to like do more dungeons. I want to do the raids and all that. So it's kind of hard to say just because there is a lot of stuff to do right now. BCP on.
Yeah, we got like backlogs of expansions to get
essentially. Yeah, but I guess with Lost Ark, I'm down to play it. I'm still kind of hesitant about it, but just because there's nothing out or there hasn't been much talk about it, and I don't feel
Lost
like looking
Ark
into
is the Korean game that we were talking about.
Yeah. The Korean ARPG.
It's a Korean ARPG pseudo MMO type thing.
Yeah, kind of.
I know Amazon is distributing it.
Yeah.
But they're also on New World, so I don't know how that's going to work.
But the New World's getting pushed back, so I doubt.
Yeah.
Someone mentioned
because like, I mean, New World is Amazon's like IP.
Right.
Lost Ark isn't their IP, so there's just a weird.
That's right.
There's just weirdness involved.
They're just the yeah, it's weird.
Or like they're either the publisher or the distributor.
I say this because then I don't know how much time I'll sink when Infinite comes out either, because it's one of those at least with Infinite, like with their armor stuff, it has the feel of Halo Reach on steroids again, and I like the system where you can access stuff now on MCC, but it's 4-5 games. I don't feel like hunting for any of that, right? While like Infinite, it's like, oh, it's just this game. You can actually just play whatever you want and then go for that. So it's kind of a mix. Like if anything, I'm probably just gonna juggle 2 ongoing, like 2 service games, and we'll just kind of go from there. We'll see. But to answer your question, for Final Fantasy, it's kind of hard to say just because right now I'm having fun with just like going through the content.
Yeah.
And I don't know, because for me, in my head, I'm like, I still have Stormblood and Shadowbringers after. I haven't even thought about Endwalker because I'm like, I don't even know if I'll get to that point when it drops, you know?
Yeah.
So we'll see. Depends on, it's kind of,
I know I don't plan on really doing any relic weapon stuff until like maybe the like current expansion stuff. So I think the way I would do it is like kind of like you said, I would come back for like every expansion as long as I'm like still enjoying the game and stuff.
Well, it's definitely easier,
I would, like,
I think, coming back
to do other stuff
on a max level because you can end up soloing a lot of content easier. Because there's still a lot of content I can't solo because I'm level 77, but I'm still kind of equipment locked because I'm in post Heaven's Word. But
oh, that's right, that's true. Yeah, let me think about that. Whoa, yeah, you're almost 80.
Yeah,
he's almost max level.
Like I'm almost max level, and I've still got 2 whole expansions to go through.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Wow. I guess what about you guys? Like flipping the question back. Because I know there's like you said, there's like Lost Ark, and then there's probably like some other stuff you guys are looking into. Would you guys also just do kind of the same? I know Ian kind of answered that question, so it's more for Luke.
Like I'm still gonna keep my sub and everything for Endwalker. I don't know much about Lost World, so I don't care too much. I know more about Lost Ark, or sorry, New World.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I know more about Lost Ark, and I'm still kind of on the fence because there's another game called Last Epoch.
Yeah.
That is an ARPG, and I've been wanting to play an ARPG. I've had that itch to play an ARPG for a few years now at this point, and really the only one you can play is Path of Exile or Diablo. And Diablo 3 is old, and from what I hear, I played it, and I kind of got like, I was kind of over it, and then a bunch of Blizzard stuff happened, so I just kind of cut away Blizzard. But even from what I hear about Path of Exile, I hear it's people have made comparisons to what is currently going on at Path of Exile to like the bad expansions for WoW, where you grind out something and then it's completely obsolete. Like 6 months later, because the devs suddenly wanted just like, we're introducing a new system and it'll revolutionize the way you play the game, and it's just, that's fine, but we keep having to do the same thing over and over, and we don't feel like we're progressing. And so there aren't any ARPGs right now I want to play. So
I've had that itch too. That's
I mean, like, really, there's only, I mean, Final Fantasy is probably the biggest game that holds my time now. And then there's a bunch of other smaller indie games that I just tend to play that are all single player. So like, depending on how Lost Ark goes or Last Epoch, I might not play Final Fantasy as much. But I'm also like, I will probably like, I plan on getting Endwalker because I do want to see the story through.
Yeah, I think the big thing is I want to get the Shadowbringers, because that's the story that's like, it got awards, right? And it's like, it was
Shadowbringers is like the
it's like
Final Fantasy experience, because it's like, oh, best ongoing multiplayer game, best MMO. It's just highly rated. But
so I want to see the hype. I want to get there. So right now, that's like my goal with Final Fantasy.
Yeah, I've been just it's interesting to hear people's thoughts about that. Because otherwise, I'm not doing a whole lot, just grinding out Final Fantasy.
Yeah, because if anything, it's crazy. At least for hearing our friends playing it, like one of them, he's been in Final Fantasy for forever, essentially, or for a while now, and he's just like, it's crazy to see like the huge population boost. Because now it's like, oh, there's actual like wait time. Even when
even before, I mean, you'd have a really short wait time.
Yeah, it was
because it'd be like, oh, there's 30 people ahead of you in the server, but now I'm starting to see like a couple hundred people ahead of me in the server.
Yeah,
and what's interesting too is it's gotten better because they implemented a few features to like kick AFK people, so people who are playing the game right now were actively playing. I was just gonna say it's really interesting because I think they started seeing this huge pop. Like people already knew Endwalker was coming out.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering how much of this is just like, oh, new expansion hype, and then how much are people just wanting to jump into Final Fantasy at this point?
Yeah. Yeah. If anything, I think that's just cool. I think it's like as a new person, I think it's just a nice experience because it's like it feels like it's a good populated MMO. Like when you walk around,
like that's what
that's just really good.
I saw an interview with a few old WoW people, and they even talked about how like the places, like everywhere on the map feels populated. It's not just the most recent hub city. You can like just go outside of a random town and you see people doing stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And it's not people just sitting there waiting in queue. It's they're just they're goofing off in game, which is strange.
Yeah,
because they specifically called out Ul'dah, because you go to the Ul'dah Aetheryte, you walk out and you just see a bunch of people doing the Manderville dance, and then right behind them is like you usually see a crowd of like 12 or 13 people playing music, and then you go to the Golden Saucer and it's everything
packed.
Yeah, like the game feels very populated.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing. It feels good. I think it makes it fun.
Yeah, there aren't any ghost towns really, so
yeah.
Ian, what have you been up to?
Man, a lot of the same. A lot of Final Fantasy. And the other thing I've been doing is watching a truck ton of a game called Orcs Must Die 3.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
That I
a random one.
Yeah, I know, right? It's I was a big fan of the second one.
And technically came out earlier, but it came out on Stadia, so no one cared.
Yeah.
It got released for the other consoles, so people care.
That's right. I remember now.
But no, and that's great. It's literally more of the same of the second one. And I love the second one. I never played the first one, but I love the second one. So I've just been watching a ton of 3.
Yeah.
And it's basically just for anyone who doesn't know, it's just a would you call it like is the genre like a tower defense?
Yeah,
but it's not really.
I would call it a tower defense.
I would call it tower defense.
So,
yeah,
tower defense-y. Bunch of orc hordes just running to a point, and you're trying to defend it. So it's really fun. They got a lot of like fun traps and stuff, and it feels really good.
I don't know. Stuff. I really love the tower defense genre. There's just something satisfying about watching things die.
Yeah, just watching all your traps rot their death.
Because like I think right now the 3 biggest genres I really want to play again. I want to play an ARPG. I want to play a tower defense, and I really like base building or management games. And I have a few lined up. It's just there's something. They're very like all 3 of those games just are very zen, and I think that's kind of what I'm looking for. Because with Final Fantasy, like I main a tank, and you can't really zen out as a tank. You kind of have to pay attention and make sure, you know, everybody's not aggroed.
Yeah.
And I
That's
just want
true.
to drool on myself while I watch cars go from point A to point B. Or even with ARPGs, like once your build is going, you just kind of zoom through the map.
You just
You
kill all the
blast.
ads. Yeah.
Yeah. Or Supposed to have 3, they added some really cool stuff where so they have their story mission, and then they have like a secondary campaign. And then on top of that, they have a they have their like endless mode, which it just progressively gets harder and harder after every round. But then they have like a roguelike style thing where it gives you 2 options of maps that you've played from the campaign. And each option comes with a debuff. And it'll be like, this type of enemy spawns every round, or this type of enemy does more damage, or something costs more, like a certain trap type costs more, stuff like that. And then after you choose one, and then at the end you get a buff as well, and that can be a bunch of stuff also. And so you play that for, I think it's like 6 maps or something like that. I forgot what that was called, but that's just like another game mode that just kind of changes things up and makes it really fun. It's honestly, I don't know, let me look this up. How much is this on Steam? Because honestly,
30,
if it's
30
like
bucks.
Oh yeah, that's a steal. Like, it's totally worth it. It's definitely worth it.
Easy.
If you like that kind of stuff.
Or you could play Ratropolis.
Yeah. Man, I still need to play that. I probably will, since that's the game I actually have right now.
Or you get Orcs Must Die. Maybe I'll get you both, and then you'll have to suffer.
Suffer. Too many.
You have to make a choice, and that's your mortal enemy, is making choices.
Luke's not wrong.
That is.
He's on point. Man.
Oh, and it comes with a soundtrack? Man, you know that's when it's good. When the soundtrack is sold separately. Dang.
Damn. You don't know what's crazy though? Sidebar, just because I was scrolling through my library. I didn't know. So a lot of people still play Rocket League. Like,
yeah.
I didn't realize that's still like a big
My
thing.
brother still plays Rocket League every once in a while.
Damn.
It's one of those where there's no other game quite like it, so it's kind of nailed its part of the market, and I think that's good enough.
Yeah. Because like I only remember just because I was talking to my fiance about it at one point when she was like looking at my Steam library, and she saw I think a notification popped up about Rocket League or something. I was I need to turn it off, and I clicked it, and she's like, "What is this game?" And I was like, "How do you explain this?" I was like, I was like, yeah, I used to play this a lot. It was essentially like cars that play soccer, and she's like, "What?" She was obviously confused because she was like trying to figure out how does that work.
Like, how does that work?
What are the logistics?
Trust me,
it just works.
Yeah,
it's like Todd Howard. It just works, man.
It just works.
Just accept that it's a thing.
Damn.
Toy cars playing soccer.
Give us Elder Scrolls 6.
I mean, they still have competitive Rocket League too. Like,
it's crazy.
I think it took probably, like most other competitive scenes, it probably took a hit during COVID. But whenever Rocket League had a like tournament to stream, it was usually pretty big on Twitch.
Yeah, it's crazy. I just remember at one point it popped up with like up the basketball mode, and I was like, "What? No, I hated aerials already. Don't make me do it on purpose." And I remember we had a group, or we had people that played.
He played for a little bit.
It's good.
Yeah. It's another one of those games where like, if you don't have a squad, if you have a squad that's more than 4, then you're bad.
Yeah.
Stop having so many friends.
Yeah.
Big. That's
Man, I was so trash at that game. I could not figure out aerials, and I didn't take the time to practice it.
yeah, same. I remember it was like an actual training segment, and I just left it right there. I was like, all right, cool, I'm done with training. I am not gonna because I couldn't pass it. I was like, nah. Yeah, I just thought it was crazy. I was like, oh, that was a blast from the past because it was like definitely one of those like because our group is always when we have like a group, we definitely get into comp mode eventually. Like we had that with that game, we had that with Overwatch, we had that with League back. Oh my gosh, crazy. And look at where those games are now.
Dead in the water where they should be.
Man,
Some of them, yeah.
Minus Rocket League,
Most
apparently.
of them.
Minus
Most of them
Rocket
should be dead.
Yeah. That was fun though.
You
It was still a
guys-
fun game,
Oh, go ahead.
even though, regardless. What were you saying?
I was gonna just super tangent. So
Yeah, go for it.
are you guys gonna go see Shang-Chi?
I was
That's-
planning
I
on
don't
it,
know.
When is
but
that?
I don't know.
It's in September, right?
It's September. Yeah, first week of September. It's Labor Day. I always mix it up. Labor Day weekend. I always mix
September
up Memorial Day and Labor Day. It's really bad.
Mm.
I was thinking about it, but then with COVID, don't know.
Back in red alert status.
But
3rd.
I love Texas, man. Yeah, I
Because-
was planning on it just because I was like, oh, it looks good.
Like I would probably go if you got a group to go, but
Yeah.
I think I just don't care enough to go on my own.
Yeah,
I'd rather just go see the Eternals.
Oh,
But that's in November, so who knows what's gonna happen then.
I think we're flipped because I was like, Eternals is. I guess it's more. I guess I just need to hear more about it, or maybe I just need to look into it more because I got the gist of it, and I was like, okay, that's cool.
I mean, they've only had what 2 trailers. So
Yeah, I guess it's just kind of weird in that like, my biggest thing is Eternals. Where were you guys? I really need an explanation of why you get because I know the whole like they don't want to intervene, and I was like, but why not this time? Like the whole that was just my one thing with it, but you know what? I'm just excited.
Yeah, like their intro into the MCU feels really weird.
Yeah,
Because like that is the way they work is like, oh, we don't interfere. But then when you go this late into the MCU after you've had Infinity War, it's like, was this not big enough?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, was it not big enough?
It probably just feels weird because.
But I mean, Thanos is related to them technically, or
if they had a separate set of like post-credit scenes where they had the Eternals like in the background showing that they were still doing stuff, I think that's easier. But I think it's going to be harder to swallow that the Eternals are suddenly just there.
Yeah,
and like, oh yeah, we could solve all your problems, we just didn't because arbitrary reasons.
Unless like unless something happened to them, you know, like it's like one of those like, oh, we wanted to help but we legitimately couldn't. I don't know, like it's gonna be one of those things, you know.
Sorry, we're busy dealing with someone the Conqueror.
I mean, Captain Marvel's the same way technically. Like, everyone's like, we're
that's the part that's like, I think it's the part that I'm really excited about because I like the bigger scale cosmic side of Marvel. But trying to translate that into like the film world, I don't think
it's gonna be hard.
It's hard, yeah.
It's gonna be hard, especially with Eternals. My one fear is like you said, the scope is supposed to be huge. But what if it's like one of those like, remember how Thor was like, it's supposed to technically Asgard's supposed to be big, but it was just focused on Earth. So it's like one of those like, what if it's the same?
Because they've had to nerf their strongest characters like across the board. And so I'm really worried that the Eternals end up nerfed because they nerfed Hulk, they nerfed Captain Marvel, and it'll be. I'll have the big sad if the Eternals are nerfed, and then they nerf Doctor Strange, and then and then I give up probably.
Nah, Doctor Strange, I have a feeling not as much, or if anything, Doctor Strange is cleaning up everything at this point, but. We'll see. Wait.
What is Morbius?
Morbius or Mobius?
Morbius. I know who Mobius is. I watched
I'm just
Matrix.
Morbius?
He's the vampire dude.
Is a movie that I guess is related to Marvel
Yeah, he's
because
the.
it's starring Jared Leto,
Mhm.
and
Oh,
he's basically
no.
a vampire.
Yeah, it deals with Blade, if I remember correctly.
Oh,
I just kind of put everything vampire with Blade, so
makes sense. Makes sense.
because
That's
technically
one way to do it.
it. I just assume like, well, because at the end of the day, it then also just runs back to Spider-Man somehow. Because I don't know, it's just
Yeah,
weird.
I
But
guess that makes sense.
yeah, because I think it's Sony, right?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. Yeah,
Yeah,
Sony's
if it's
Sony's
Sony, then
weird.
it's
I
in a
don't
weird
know.
limbo state.
Yeah, don't know what to, because they dropped the Venom trailer, another one.
I've been meaning to watch that. I just didn't watch it yet.
Yeah, I mean the first one for me, I think it was a fun watch. I think my expectations were low already, so maybe that's a big bias.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was a fun watch. The new one is like a very, I'm confused with the tone. I don't know, but
Do you think they'll ever wrap the symbiote line into Marvel MCU, or do you think there's just going to be the MCU and then the symbiote just will never? Symbiotes will always stay with Sony.
I think it's up to Sony, honestly. I would like that. I would love for for everything to just. I would love that to an extent, actually, but there's this all like.
'Cause, like it, I don't,
It,
I don't know too much of what they've announced for the new Spider-Man, but
there's nothing. Don't worry.
was there a title drop at all?
Yeah,
Or
yeah, yeah. It's No Way Home.
yeah,
But beyond that, there's only been pictures and maybe like a teaser, but there's been no like actual trailer. And people have been clamoring for that trailer for so long
mhm.
because the movie comes out end of the year. So, and everyone thought that and then we're like, oh, they waited because of what happened in Loki, but still no trailer. Like Spider-Man Day happened like a couple days ago. And,
I just wonder if like what they do with Spider-Man pulls away so far from the symbiotes that introducing them just wouldn't make sense anymore. Because
or
the theory I hear is that they're gonna be like, it sounds like they're doing multiverse stuff, which seems to be like the big push going forward for Marvel as a whole, is we're doing multiverse stuff. And
right, yeah,
you could probably spin the symbiotes in there somewhere, but it's just like when Spider-Man's dealing with that, and then random shoehorn, don't forget you have symbiotes you have to deal with.
Yeah, I think that if anything, they might just be worried about, or at least they should be worried about doing a Spider-Man 3. I think that's the sad part. I think that's the big.
I don't think he'll ever be able to pull off. Like, I don't think that'll happen again.
Yeah, I mean,
because the big thing was that was a lot of what's the word? Like the studio went over the director's head because they wanted Venom specifically.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I want to do a Sandman movie. They're like, well, you have to have both or we're not going to fund it. Exactly. So he has to shoehorn it. I would.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think the next Spider-Man would suddenly have, oh, you have to do Venom and you also have to do, I don't know, random. It'd be like, it'd be combining Into the Spider-Verse with a random Venom storyline. I think Marvel's directorship would understand well enough why, hey, we shouldn't do that again.
Exactly. No, I guess it's more like it could just be more of a Sony thing if at this point. We don't know. I think also it's just because Sony they always leave a bad aftertaste with like multiple Spider-Man villains in a movie, because Amazing Spider-Man 2 kind of had that issue too.
Electro and Green Goblin.
It was. I don't know if
they were trying to set up so badly for a Sinister Six. Because they even had Rhino for a tiny.
They just shoehorned Rhino at the beginning. I was like, or at the end too. But it was just like, they just don't know how to. Because Spider-Man's Rogue Gallery is like really good. Like, it's top tier, but it's just. I think they have to handle it with care. That's just the issue. Which And sometimes
Like even Spider-Man PS4, a singular game, had the Sinister Six in a better like intro
yeah,
than you
it
did with
did.
2 movies.
It did.
So
You're right.
I get what you're saying with that. That's fair.
Yeah. They had to. It's just you have to build it up correctly, and I think. But yes, I agree. I think Marvel would do it right, but I think it's also just like all these legalities and corporate stuff.
Yeah,
Because
who
I want
has
it.
rights to what?
I would love to have symbiotes like in MCU. That'd be great. I want a lot of things with Spider-Man. That'd be great. But here we are. Because I mean,
Here we
apparently this
are.
is This is Tom Holland's last movie contractually.
Yeah, contractually, then they'll
Yeah.
renegotiate.
Yeah. Well, and then also apparently Marvel or MCU or Marvel will only no longer do like movie deals. They'll just do like per movie now contract. They won't do like a 3-movie deal or anything like that. They're doing away with that now because they're so big.
Huh.
Yeah. I think they're trying to I don't think like as we
Well,
we
I mean,
all like
especially
Robert Downey
because
Jr., but we don't want I think they don't want to have to be locked into that again probably.
I think it's also they had such a like well-defined road leading into Infinity War Endgame.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now, I mean, what have we had for Phase 4? Black Widow?
Yeah.
And that wasn't really like to me wasn't a Phase 4 movie because it doesn't expand on what's happening next. It's just here's backstory for
if anything, well, because when Black Widow was supposed to drop, it was technically supposed to be the first thing. So if anything, it was like supposed to be the intro back into MCU. So it was like that in between. But obviously that didn't happen. And then all the shows came out, and so now it feels backwards. But I think it was just COVID like that caused that issue.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's also like a matter of do you factor in the shows being part of Phase 4, or because they're TV shows, does that not count?
No, it's counted. They do count, but it's a weird. They have the impact, but if anything, it's not as like a. It's not a huge driving force, but it's like a way for them to still move forward somewhere in certain areas, but not like they have to put like a movie out, but it's like still it's weird.
My whole point was like I feel like they haven't solidified what's the next big thing, because just putting out movies and TV shows for the sake of putting them out isn't feasible.
No, they do. They kind of lead.
Well, they do, but
or I guess they allude to the movies.
So
you're right.
For me personally, if they just start releasing these just to like, hey, we know these make money, we don't have a culminating arc, then I don't care anymore. But if they end up doing, 5, 6, 7 years down the line, everything culminates in something, that should be to me, that should be the next end, and not just our IPs are out and free.
Yeah. Because have you watched WandaVision too? Or no, right?
Nope.
You haven't watched? So WandaVision and Loki have that. They apply 10 years. I see them applying for the next 10 years. Falcon is one of those like, okay, here's a way to introduce the new Captain America. It's okay. So those two are fine, but I think I get what you mean though. I also hope they don't just do like a, hey, we're just gonna drop these just to have the IP, right? And treat it like Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But we're okay. But I think right now at the direction they're going, at least with Loki, I'm like, all right, if they keep doing that, then like the next whatever other shows, it would be awesome. But then also sucks for anyone that comes in. I will continuously say this. We're at that point where it's a lot. This is a lot to keep up with. And if you drop, like for instance, like you dropping out like Thanos, makes sense. Because there's so much. Like if someone was like, hey, I want to get in, I'm like, well, Disney Plus got you. They have everything in either chronological or
it's
whatever.
Like 20 movies or 26 movies.
But when I see it, I'm like, that's so much. That's a lot.
Yeah, that's like a endeavor.
Yeah. If anything, it's like
we say that and then we grind 6 hours on Final Fantasy like it's nothing.
Fair point.
To each
but
their
we're built different,
own.
constructed uniquely, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, I hate it. Yeah, there's so much. But yeah, speaking of Final Fantasy.
What, you ready to drop out and just like, I need to go grind now?
Nah. No, what are you talking about? I just said speaking of Final Fantasy, that's all. It's a good game.
Speaking
That's
of
the
Final
code word.
Fantasy, that's what we're gonna go do.
Speaking of Final Fantasy, I've been playing the whole time. You just can't hear my clicking.
Dang. I got linear, so it's quiet.
What is
Somewhat.
happening? What is happening? All
We're
right.
gonna start talking about keyboards now. That's what we're
No, we're not going to. I saw that. Oh man.
Yeah, I randomly opened Discord. I see, like 50 plus unread messages. It's all keyboard talk.
Yeah.
Bananas.
That's another day.
That's a conversation we don't need to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's
So I don't have anything else I want to say or talk about. If you guys are good, then
I'm hungry, so
you're hungry. All right. That's the call. That's the real ending point. Is whenever we get
Easy.
hungry. It's time to go.
Every time.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. You can tweet us any topic or suggestions, as always, at SuperBoss Pod. We are also on the YouTubes. Check us out there. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks always for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.